Hello, brother and sister. My name is Wuatauw, and I'm here with Zajef. Zajef, please can you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I am Zajef. I'm a Genshin theory crafter. I stream on Twitch. I've been theory crafting for, I don't know, like a year and a half almost now. And yeah, I've been part of a few theory crafting communities. I've been helping out some content creators with theory crafting and fact checking for their guides and stuff like that.
Thank you, Zajef. Today we will answer some of your questions in my community post. Start from number 1. What is your opinion on spiral epic usage rate for meta tier list? We can answer each on one of us, but do you want to start first or should I?
Sure, I can go. I think that the thing about Spiral Abyss usage rates is they basically tell you how popular things are, but strength is not the only factor that goes into making something popular, right? If a unit is fun to play, people are going to play it, even if it's not as strong. If a team is easy to play, is popular because of, I don't know, a streamer or a YouTuber that made a video about it, it's going to make the usage rate look higher, even if it's not because the team is strong. So you can look at usage rates to give you a decent idea of like a basic understanding of where units stand, but very often there's going to be a lot of units that aren't really where they should be when it comes to just power level. Especially because when it comes to 5-star characters, if you don't want the 5-star character, if you're not going to play it, you're probably just not going to wish for that character, right? Whereas for 4-star characters, you're probably going to get it by accident at some point, even if you are not planning on using it. So very often you're going to have things like 4-star characters that end up relatively low in usage rate, even if they're quite good, just because they're a 4-star character and people just don't, they didn't have to make the decision, okay, I'm going to wish for this character. So they're not really committed to building the character, so they just let it sit on the bench without ever really giving it a try.
So there is a fun factor and there is the more convenient factor for the tier list based on usage rate. Is that correct?
Can you say that again? The second part?
So there are two factors that I think it affected the tier list based on epic usage rate. Those are the fun factor of using those kind of team comp or that character. The second one is because that character or the lineup is easier to execute instead of using other lineup.
Yes.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's obviously other things as well. Like those are not the only two things, but I think they're the main ones. Yeah.
Yes. What I concern is those kind of spiral epic usage rate. Usually, it's kind of subjective because it depends on the enemy on the spiral epic, like currently or next one or previous one. Because on the previous one we have 2 pyro lector that you have to use hydro. So therefore, like character like Bennett that we are thinking a good character is not good at the moment because you need hydro instead of pyro character for breaking the shield of those kind of enemies. So do you think that spiral epic usage rate for meta tier list, is it accurate enough for people to consider whether or not this character is meta good enough to have or something like that?
I'd say that generally, if a 4-star character is high in usage rate, the only reasonable explanation is that they're very good. And if a 5-star character is low in usage rate, then the only reasonable explanation is that they're not very good. But if a 5-star character is high, it could just be because they're fun to play, or because their voice actor is popular, or because anything like that. And if a 4-star character is low, it could also just be because people don't give them a shot. So in other words, I think that there's some things you can conclude, but if you just look at it like 1-to-1, if a character is popular, it's good, then you're mostly gonna be wrong.
Okay. I think that's all the answer from both of us. Zajef, do you have any other answer?
No, that's good.
Okay, that's all. Let's continue to the next question. This question have a lot of different types, but they're pointing to the same question. So it's about Kazuha and Sucrose. Some people asking why Sucrose is underrated, why Kazuha has more pick rates in spiral episode usage rate, etc. So I think the key question is Kazuha and Sucrose, which one is better, or they are the same, or what power they should be. I need to remind you, Zajef, that Kazuha sim in Indonesia is a bit not a bit, quite wild. So I think you should choose your words carefully for this this question.
Yeah. All right. I think the main thing that goes into it, in my opinion, is that a lot of what Kazuha does, he does just with his skill and his burst, and you don't really need to bother too much figuring out the exact order of skill uses to get specific swirl setups and stuff like that. Like sometimes you want to do specific setups to get swirls on 2 elements at the same times, but a lot of the time, even if you don't do it, you'll still get pretty good value out of Kazuha. Whereas when it comes to Sucrose's value, you really need to get the right one. A lot of her value comes from her elemental mastery sharing, which people don't notice as much as a damage percent buff because it's reactions. And in a lot of Sucrose's good teams, you end up using her auto attacks to trigger a lot of swirls, which, well, swirls overall, over time, especially in an electrocharge team, can do a lot of damage through all those small damage instances adding up to a pretty good, high number overall. But it's not one big number, and a lot of it comes from her normal attacks, which is not as straightforward to figure out. I think that overall they're obviously both very good characters, but I think that people, again, right, same idea. Kazuha is a 5-star character and Sucrose is a 4-star character. So people that wished for Kazuha were well, I want to make this character work. So when they ended up giving Kazuha a bit more time and effort to figure out how to play him properly, whereas they might not have given the same amount of time and effort to Sucrose to figure out how to play her properly. And that, combined with the fact that Kazuha is arguably easier to play overall, has led to a lot of people thinking that Kazuha is significantly stronger than Sucrose, whereas in reality, I think they're very close together in power level.
So you think that Sucrose and Kazuha is about the same power level?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I often talk about how I consider Sucrose to be stronger than Kazuha, but really it's more that I think they're about the same, and because people think that Kazuha is so much stronger than Sucrose, when I say I think Sucrose is better, it gets people talking and asking why I think that, and it creates for some interesting conversations. But at the end of the day, I think Sucrose and Kazuha are basically about as good as each other overall.
Okay, what I think about Kazuha and Sucrose being the same, I agreed with that opinion because Kazuha and Sucrose perform a similar function. They both buff your character, while Kazuha have different buff. He buffs elemental damage bonus instead of Sucrose buff your elemental mastery. So there are opinion about these two characters because Sucrose buffing a character elemental mastery is not as flexible as Kazuha because you need to do reaction to get the benefit of the elemental mastery. Therefore, people tend to use mono lineup for Kazuha, which makes the opinion correct because I think in mono lineup Kazuha perform better because we don't use elemental reaction in mono lineup.
Definitely.
Therefore, in a lineup like freeze team, we use elemental reaction, but EM doesn't give the benefit for freeze. Accept shatter, but we don't use shatter reaction because it's not that good, I think.
Yeah.
And then about Kazuha being a 5-star for a value, I mean value for you should pull or not. It's much harder for you to get Kazuha instead of Sucrose because it's a 5-star character and it is a limited character. You need to wait for his banner so you can get Kazuha, while Sucrose is a 4-star standard that you can get anytime, like really anytime. You can get it from current character limited randomly, and then you can get from standard wish randomly. So I think for F2P perspective, Sucrose has bigger value because you can get her anytime, unlike Kazuha.
I'm not entirely sure I would agree with that. Yes, to some extent I do, but also having two Sucroses is very good. So having a Kazuha, that's a character that's about as good as Sucrose, on top of your Sucrose is very valuable.
Okay. So, do you recommend people for getting 2 Anemo crowd control? Because in my opinion, we just need just 1 Anemo crowd control or Anemo buffer.
It's not really about the crowd control. It's more about the buffs.
Okay.
And yeah, I do think that having 2 buffs is actually very valuable. Generally, you're only going to need crowd control on one of the 2 sides when it comes to Abyss. But there's so many teams that maybe not require, but that really like having an Anemo buffer, that most of the time, yeah, I would say having 2 of them is pretty valuable for an account.
On my stream or on my video, usually I just advise people to get just one of the 3 Anemo support. Like, just get one between Kazuha, Sucrose, or Friendly. Just get one of them and you'll be fine fighting a lot of enemies that can be crowd control.
I think that looking at the crowd control part, that's very accurate. You're very rarely going to need crowd control on both sides. But even the crowd control aside, Sucrose and Kazuha are just strong units still, right?
Okay.
Like, even if it's not about their crowd control, they're still valuable, they're still good.
And I have another opinion about Kazuha and Sucrose for their weapons. Based on my F2P perspective, Sucrose has more weapon that I think it is very good, like Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayer, which you can get it for free from your random gacha, and then you can refine it for Refine 5. That is very good for buffing one character on your, especially for your main DPS or on-field DPS. And the other kind of weapon, I think Prototype also is kind of unique for this effect. You can heal using Sucrose. I mean, Sucrose is not a healer, but you can use this weapon as a healer. Sometimes I use lineup that it doesn't have a healer, I just bring Sucrose and then I use her wearing prototype Ember, so she can heal my team.
Yeah.
And then the last one is Hakushin Ring, which I don't create because of the key item for Kazabi if you do the quest. I think that item can change Sucrose to become like similar Kazuha, that you can buff electro damage bonus, specifically electro damage bonus. Do you think Hakushin Ring can be perform similar as if you're using Kazuha in electro comms?
I mean, it kind of depends. I think that, like, yeah, you kind of become a pseudo Kazuha, like a Kazuha wannabe to some extent, but I don't think it's her best weapon in Electrocharge comps. I think that generally when it comes to Electrocharge comps, Sucrose's best weapon is the Sacrificial Fragments. Yeah, because you get an additional E, which is more swirls, which is more damage because you're building her with full EM, but you're also getting more energy generation and more grouping, which is very, very valuable. You also get, even when you don't need the grouping, Sucrose's E has a pretty high stagger value. So when you're looking at something like Rift Hounds, having one more E can be the difference between them being able to resolve their attack and them getting cancelled out of it because of stagger. Overall, every time I've played a Taser team, an Electrocharge team with Sucrose, with Sac Frag, it felt better than when I played it with another one. Even though I know that there's situations where the other weapons can actually outperform Sacrificial Fragments when it comes to just like the damage you get on a sheet, right? When you calculate total team DPS. But yeah, when it comes to weapon options overall, I do think it is nice that we have access to Hakushin, Prototype Amber, and Thrilling Tales as really good free-to-play options for Sucrose. Now, we also have access to Iron Sting for Kazuha, but I've been pretty vocal about this, especially recently. I think people overuse Iron Sting on Kazuha.
Like refining them?
No, well, yes, there's that. You shouldn't refine, or probably shouldn't refine Iron Sting on Kazuha because it doesn't buff his swirl damage to refine it, just the rest of his damage, and most of his damage is coming from swirls to begin with, so it doesn't make much of a difference to refine it, and you're kind of just wasting prototypes. But it's mostly that I don't think Iron Sting is that good on him. I think most of the time, going for a Favonius sword or a Sacrificial sword is going to be better than going for an Iron Sting. Yeah, when you look at the stats you get from Iron Sting, the damage percent you get from the passive doesn't, again, right? It doesn't do that much because it doesn't increase your swirl damage, right?
Correct.
Same for the base attack, which doesn't do that much because, again, base attack doesn't affect swirl damage, and most of Kazuha's damage comes from swirls. And so, when you look at the rest of the stats, so the Elemental Mastery, you get 165. Now, most of the time, if you want to be playing Kazuha to the best of, like, if you want to be playing Kazuha in the way where you get the most out of him, you need to have a lot of energy recharge on him. There's certain teams, like with Raiden, certain Electrocharge teams where you don't need too much energy recharge, but in a lot of teams you are going to end up needing like upwards of 180 energy recharge. Usually a bit less, but it can go that high sometimes. And so most of the time you're going to need to use an energy recharge Sands if you're using an Iron Sting. And when you're looking at the energy recharge you get from a Sands, it's 51.8, right? So you get 165 Elemental Mastery and 51.8 energy recharge from the subside of the weapon plus the main stat of the Sands, of the timepiece. But if you were to go for an energy recharge weapon instead, because they have lower base attack, and you don't care about the base attack that much, they trade that base attack for a higher substat. And so both of the energy recharge swords, being the Favonius and the Sacrificial, they have they give more ER than a Sans does, so it's 61.3, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure the number after the, but it's 61 point something.
Yeah.
And then an Elemental Mastery Sans gives you 187, which is more than what the Iron Sting gives you. So you end up with just more stats overall. But then on top of that, the passive on Sacrificial and Favonius is significantly better than the passive on Iron Sting. Because again, the passive on Iron Sting doesn't increase your swirl damage, just your talent damage, which is a pretty small portion of Kazuha's overall damage. Whereas the clear particles that you get from Favonius and the additional E you get from Sacrificial can actually be incredibly valuable.
I'm agree with that. And I think I kind of give some people advice for using Kazuha. You need to use the number one is 4th edition whenever, instead of maximize your full EM stats. I think you should consider that number one is you have to use 4th edition whenever.
Yeah, definitely. You need to have 4 Viridescent. If you don't have 4 Viridescent, you're definitely not getting the best out of Kazuha. That's
correct.
For sure.
I mean, some people is kind of overhyped because Kazuha can give you elemental damage bonus, which I think people took it wrong. I mean, people should be thinking that 4th edition is more important instead of just elemental damage bonus a few percent. Do you understand me?
No, sorry, can you say that again?
I think people should be consider 4th edition whenever the sword debuff more instead of you are focusing on elemental damage bonus.
Yeah, 100%. The bonus you get from the Viridescent Venerer is basically bigger than all of the damage bonus you get from Kazuha. Literally just getting the Viridescent Venerer bonus will be more than all of the damage you gain from Kazuha. Like from his Ascension 4, his damage bonus. It is more valuable, and if your only Viridescent Venerer set has like 50 Elemental Mastery, it's still good enough to use because Viridescent Venerer is just too important.
Okay. So to summarize, I think Kazuha and Sucrose is about the same. I think. Do we have agree for that?
Yeah.
Okay. That's for Zajef. I'm not the one to say it, but I think okay lah. They are about the same. I hope that Kazuha Sim agrees with that opinion because it's kind of
the thing about that is it's not that Kazuha is bad. It's not that Kazuha is bad in any way. It's that Sucrose is incredibly good, just like Kazuha.
It's just I think people is kind of not able to play Sucrose like easily as Kazuha, therefore they are saying like Sucrose is bad instead of Kazuha, and then when we are saying that Kazuha is almost perform the same level as Sucrose, they're kind of angry because of that.
I mean, it's definitely easier to play Kazuha, right?
Correct.
So for people, I mean, obviously not everyone plays this game as much as streamers and YouTubers do, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's fair to consider Kazuha to be better than Sucrose for like the average player, and I'm not gonna get angry at someone who says that he's better. But if you are trying to get into theory crafting and into like maximizing your characters, then you'll notice that the difference between them is very, very minimal. And once you learn how to play Sucrose properly, overall they're both like very solid.
Okay. We are going to the next question.
Yeah.
Number 3, if you use mono element lineup, is it a must to have a character with 4 noblesse set and Viridescent in the party? Okay, you can go.
I mean, do you want to go ahead first?
Sure. I think it depends of your lineup is for 4 noblesse set, because not all character, like for example Yelan is using 4 noblesse set will be benefit for Yelan's damage. But for Viridescent, I think that is a must for your lineup to have, because it reduces the resistance that all your elemental character do that damage. Like for example, you use Bandit and Xiangling for mono pyro lineup, you will need Viridescent to increase overall the team damage. And I will consider 4 Archaic Petra that can be used for increase another elemental damage bonus for the whole party, because yeah, use that same element. I think that's all from me. Zajef, do you have any answer?
I think you might actually be underrating Noblesse. I think Noblesse is a very, very good set. It's very, very rare to find a team where you're better off just not using Noblesse at all. Like, for example, even if you have Yelan on your team, I mean, in a mono hydro team, then it's in a mono element team, then it's mono hydro, right?
Correct.
And if it's mono hydro with like Xingqiu and Ayato, then I think that getting a Noblesse is definitely worth it, even if you only have 2 units that benefit from it.
Okay.
Because even if it's only 2 units that benefit from it, that's still 20% attack on 2 units. It's kind of like 40% attack.
Okay.
Plus the 20% burst damage bonus on the 2-piece, and it ends up just being overall more valuable than other sets would be.
Okay. I think that's all for the question number 3. Let's go for question number 4. What constellation that is worth to get for a 5-star character?
For 4 and 5-star characters?
I'm sorry. 4 5-star character, not 4-star character.
Okay.
Only 5-star character.
Alright.
The most. So I think he just has 1 character.
Let's see. Did you want to go first?
Sure. I think it is Wuatauw C1. The charge attack that does not consume stamina can be crazy, because you can spam it and then you can just manage your stamina more easily instead of using your charge attack, and then you will be use jump cancelling instead of dash cancelling. It will be I think it's a disadvantage for that. And then if you can charge attack and then dash cancelling, it will increase your damage if you can do the charge attack dash cancelling well. What do you think about that, Zajef?
Yeah, I think that if you're looking for the biggest increase in power level from C0 to C1, then Wuatauw C1 is definitely a strong contender for it. I'm gonna cheat on this question though. I think that
you can use C6. That's a whole different story.
I think that the best constellation to get on most characters is Constellation 0. I think that for most 5-star characters, at least especially the 5-star supports, so often is going to be better to get a 5-star support for your carry than to get a constellation on your 5-star carry, right? Like, for example, looking at the difference between getting C1 for Wuatauw or getting Yelan that you can put on your Wuatauw team with Xingqiu to do double hydro with Wuatauw.
Okay.
For most players, I would actually generally recommend going for that like 5-star support instead of a constellation, especially because like even not looking at just the team itself, more characters means more team options, and you can use them with more different carries as well. So I think that like if you're just looking at constellations, then yeah, Wuatauw is like definitely a fair answer. But I also think that very often people will like they want to get constellations on their 5-stars because they want to, when they play that 5-star, feel like it's stronger, right?
Right.
And a lot of the time, you're gonna feel like you're stronger, or you're gonna get a better increase in strength from getting a different character rather than going for a constellation directly. Indirect power increases are often more valuable than direct power increases. You know what I mean?
Yes, I understand. But what do you think about the constellation that is worth it? I mean, don't cheat the question because the person who asked this question, he kind of bored building a new character. So he asked me to think that what character that worth getting for their constellation.
But yeah, if it's only constellations, if you're looking at something like C1, Wuatau's C1 is very valuable.
I think it should be closed for C0 to C1 because C2 is basically you have to get 2 constellation instead of 1 constellation.
The thing is, a lot of, especially newer characters, a lot of their good, like quote-unquote good constellation or best constellation is at around the C2, right? If you look at someone like Ayaka, her C2 is very valuable. If you look at someone like Raiden, her C2 is very valuable. If you look at someone like Yelan, her C2 is very valuable. When it comes to only C1, I think it is probably Wuatauw.
Okay, let's go for the next question. I think this will be the last one. Why character that doesn't use elemental reaction such as Xiao, Itto, Eula is considered underrated? Is elemental reaction really that good?
The thing that I think a lot of people don't realize when it comes to characters like that is, yes, elemental reactions are that good, but if Hoyoverse or Mihoyo or whatever you want to call it, right? If they want to release a character that is good, all they have to do is make their numbers bigger, right?
Okay.
At the end of the day, characters are balanced around what reactions they can do. I think that overall Mihoyo's balance is actually pretty good. When you look at a character like Itto, right? If Itto was another element, if Itto had access to reactions, Itto would probably be kind of broken, but he's not. The reason why he has the numbers he has is because he doesn't have access to those things, right?
Right.
I think that, thinking about it, from a reaction point of view, yes, reactions are incredibly good, and characters from elements that have better reactions, generally, it's easier for them to be good, because even if they're not that good, you can kind of just use them for reactions. Whereas characters that don't have good reactions, if their base kit isn't that good, they're kind of just useless. But if Mihoyo wants a character to be good, it will be good. Itto, Xiao, Eula, I think that I wouldn't call them as strong as a lot of the other carries we have, but it's not because their element or their damage type prevents them from being strong. It's just because their numbers aren't quite high enough.
Okay. So, for my opinion about this question, in free-to-play perspective, I think reaction is really important to increase your damage, or you can just use their utility like overload. You can stagger enemies, but in mono reaction like non-elemental reaction team like Itto or Xiao, you have to use number of characters that can buff that one character. Like for Itto, you have to use Goro. For Xiao, you have to use Bennett or Thrilling Tales from Sucrose. So you can increase their damage not because of the elemental reaction, but other character utility or weapon. Therefore, I think elemental reaction is much easier to get access because you use the benefit of the elemental reaction. You get, for example, you use Vaporize, you get Vaporize damage bonus or melt damage bonus instead of using just that character buff. You have two advantages from the one is from the other character, the second one is from the elemental reaction. So you have to benefit. You have to benefit instead of just one benefit if you are not using elemental reaction. Do you agree with that, Zajef?
I don't know. I think that.
And also for Itto, Xiao, Eula character build, you need to use like hyper carry style. You have to use like 5-star weapon to get those character good enough to compare with line up with with elemental reaction.
I think that I don't know if I would agree that like they need specific characters, but whereas reactions don't. But I think it would be fair to say that the characters that reaction teams need, most often you'll be looking at something like Xingqiu, something like Bennett, something like I don't know, right? Those characters. Not only are they good, but also most people have them because, well, in the case of Bennett and Xingqiu, they're both available in the Circulator shop, and they come in banners pretty often, right? So I don't think I would agree that like Itto, Xiao, and Eula need specific characters, whereas reaction teams don't. But I think it's fair to say that the characters that reaction teams need are overall better and more accessible than the characters that like an Itto is gonna need.
So it's about the other character as well, not just that character.
Exactly.
Okay. I think that's all the question that I want to ask you, Zajef, and myself. Thank you, Zajef, for joining my video.
Thank you for having me.
If you want to listen more about this podcast like video, you can subscribe me or subscribe Zajef. I will put the link for Zajef's channel in description and then in pin comment. You can go for that. And thank you for watching this video. Bye. Zajef, please say bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye.